Good evening and welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your night to join us for this public hearing. This is a public hearing for an after-the-fact permit application received by EGLE to place riprap, fill sand, and a permanent dock in Thumb Lake, Charlevoix County. My name is Ryan Blazik. I'm with EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'm just going to be moderating the hearing tonight. Before we get too far, though, I just have a couple logistical things to go through. The first thing is our agenda. Just to let you know, this is what it's going to look like for tonight, what we're going to be going through. We're going through the introduction right now. And then the big thing to keep in mind is that there's kind of going to be two parts to this hearing. We're going to start off with an informational session. That's where the applicant has an opportunity to describe the proposed project and application. We'll follow that with a short question and answer session. And that will go until we run out of questions or until 6:30-ish. And then we'll go through the official hearing part. That's where everybody on the line will have an opportunity to make a comment for the record on this application. We'll also go through the other ways to submit an official comment in case you didn't want to make a comment tonight, where to find other information and who to contact in case you have some further questions. All right. In case you haven't joined us for a hearing before, all lines are going to be muted during this hearing, so you'll be able to hear us, everything we say, but we can't hear you. You can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar. As I mentioned before, there will be a short Q&A session after the presentation, so you can type those questions in the Q&A box, and you will also have an opportunity to ask those questions verbally, but we'll go through how we're going to do that later right before the Q&A. And then we are recording this hearing. This hearing will be posted on our YouTube channel in a couple of days in case you want to watch it again or forward it on. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite our other EGLE staff who are on the line to introduce themselves.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Joe Haas, District Supervisor with the EGLE Water Resources Division for the Cadillac and Gaylord field offices. I supervise field staff covering regulatory resource programs in the northern 22 counties. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin Emmington. I am an environmental quality analyst with the Water Resource Division. I work out of the Gaylord District office. I cover Charlevoix and Emmett counties. And tonight I will be the hearings officer. I'm also the environmental quality analyst processing this application. This application is on public notice tonight because it did not meet the requirements of one of our minor or general project categories. The project is applying for an after-the-fact permit authorization to place rock riprap and fill below the ordinary high water mark, and also to place a permanent dock on Thumb Lake. And today we're going to have the applicant present his project next, I believe.
Yep, thanks, Erin, for that introduction, and Joe. All right, the applicant, Dominic Torres, the applicant is going to provide some information here. So Dominic, we're going to find you in the audience and unmute you. It looks like you're unmuted on our end. You can unmute yourself. Looks like, are you there, Dominic?
I am.
All right, perfect. I have your slides here. If you can just let me know when to move on to the next slide. And then if you could keep it to like 10, 15 minutes to make sure we have enough time for some question and answers, that would be appreciated. So you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, as you all know, that red mark is where our house is located. It's on Horner Island. Horner Island is primarily a round island. We are somewhat in a cove. You could go to the next slide, please. So this is just zooming into our house a little closer. As you can see, that cove that I was mentioning. From this view, being that the island is round, our neighbors adjacent to us really do not have that much of a view of our dock from inside their house. They would have to go pretty much on their dock or their deck, and even somewhat closer to the shoreline to see the our existing dock that is in question here. There was one house though on that point that would have more of a direct view, and that's pretty much the main house that would have the direct view of the existing dock. So you can move on. So this is the site plan of the existing property. Shows the house, the garage, shows the riprap, it shows the dock. The riprap was put in place in 2020, actually when the heart of COVID, I think it was April, when pretty much everything was shut down, and the water level was extremely high, and it was actually affecting our foundation. And I took it on my behalf to repair the existing riprap, bring in fill sand, use a geotextile fabric, and also brought boulders on site and utilize existing boulders. This is also, you could see in red, is the proposed permanent dock. One thing to point out, this is not, we're not proposing building a new structure. It is our existing dock that has been installed and removed for the past 3 years. The dock goes out 48 feet, but 8 feet of that is actually on land. So it would go out, it goes out 40 feet right now, and it goes out to about 5 foot of water. So you can go on to the next slide, please. So this is just more of an aerial and a side view of what was put in place, the sand, the riprap, and the boulders, and also an aerial of more of a sketch of the dock also. You can go next. This is just another cross section of what's in place right now. You can go next. So this is also a cross section of the dock where it's 48 feet, like I stated, but 8 foot of that is actually on land. So it only goes out 40 foot. And that water depth there, which reads 6 feet, is actually closer to 5. There's a few things to point out here. Let me, 1 second. So in regards to our proposed dock, one thing was brought up was that it could possibly need to go through an approval process through our association, referring to the Horner Island covenants, specifically section C. It's clear that the covenant pertain to structures like barns and sheds and not docks. Since inception of the association in 1986, there's been no precedent requiring docks to undergo an association approval process. The nature of the dock, contrary to some claims, we're not constructing a new quote unquote permanent dock. Like I stated, this is just utilizing our existing structure. The posts actually have flat bottoms where they rest on the lake bed. Nothing would be anchoring into the lake. We would not actually do anything. It would just stay as it lies right now. This approach would actually has minimal impact on the lake bed. In fact, maintaining the dock year round would be less disruptive than a biannual removal and installation process. There was some concerns about milfoil. Well, actually keeping the dock in year round is likely to reduce the spread of this invasive species like milfoil due to the decreased disturbance from seasonal dock removal. There has been milfoil actually within our cove. So to install this dock in the spring and remove it in the fall, it does get pretty disruptive. So this would just keep the existing dock in its place. As I mentioned in regard to the view from the neighboring properties, being that the island is pretty much a circle. Our neighbors to the east of us, they look more out to the southeast, where they pretty much have to come on their dock and look over to more of the south to see our dock, this existing dock. Our neighbors to the west, when we're completely out on our dock, looking towards their house, we can't even see their deck. So they actually have to come further out onto their beach to see our existing dock, of which this is the same dock that we've left or has been in the lake every year for the past 3 years. And there's only one individual that has a direct view, and she's probably 75 to 80 yards away. And she does have a view of the dock, and that's pretty much the only one that has a direct view of it. In regards to precedent within the community, it's important to notice that there's actually on the island at 687 Circle Drive, they actually have a permanent dock in place. Since we've been there, that dock has been there. And then directly across that bay where they're at, South Birch Circle and Horner Island Trail, that individual also has multiple docks that stay in all winter. So within 100 yards of our home, there's 2 other docks that are in the lake year round. So this is not setting a precedent. It's actually somewhat common where we're at. There was some comments about geotextile fabric. The research that we've done what I did when I built or maintained this our riprap that's commonplace is to use sand and geotextile fabric. And it's held up. It's not losing any integrity or anything like that. And it's pretty solid. So I think that that pretty much is everything I have to say there.
All right, thanks for that information, Dominic. We're going to go right into the question and answer session at this time. A couple things to keep in mind. You have some options to asking a question. If you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar. You'll see it at the bottom. Just type it in, hit send. Or if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can hit the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If there's anyone calling in by phone, you can select #2 on your receiver, and what that will do is that will raise your hand in Zoom, and then we'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. So the way I'll do this is I'll go to the Q&A box for a little bit, then go to the raised hands for a little bit. Also, this, just to reiterate, this is a question and answer session. If you have a statement that you'd like to make, hold on to that for now. We're going to actually have the hearing portion tonight in a little bit here. So this is for answering your questions on the application or the permit. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. All right, here we go. Got some multiple questions here. Did the applicant attempt to obtain a permit in 2020 or contact EGLE or file the paperwork? So I don't know, Aaron, or who's the best person?
I can speak to that. We don't have any record on file of a permit being applied for in 2020.
All right, thanks. Did the applicant have the equipment in the water to conduct the shoreline stabilization project, including getting equipment stuck in near shore water? I'm assuming, yeah, when they were doing the project. I don't know if that's something, Aaron.
I don't know that EGLE can speak to that because we were not on site or notified when the project was completed in 2020.
Okay. Are EGLE and the applicant aware of the damage that resulted to the neighboring riparian from the shoreline project? Can anybody answer any? If they're aware that any damage occurred?
Yeah, I guess I would say that there was no complaint filed for this project as it was completed. It was something that was found by EGLE staff when the applicant applied for a permanent dock. So we didn't receive a complaint on this project after the fact. The violation and after the fact permit application were submitted after EGLE found unpermitted work had been completed.
Thank you. This one the applicant might have to answer. Has the applicant obtained appropriate permits from soil erosion and sedimentation control and Hudson Township? Dominic, go ahead. Or
I was going to say, so that's a Part 91 permit or soil erosion permit issued through the county, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what they're referencing. Soil erosion, sedimentation control, and Hudson Township. So it sounds like they might be referencing 2 separate permits. Or 2 separate authorizations or permits.
I see Dominic raising his hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Dominic. You can unmute yourself and answer if you'd like. Looks like, yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, all right, we can move on.
A soil erosion permit was pulled.
Okay. All right. Can the applicant explain the discrepancy between what exists and what is being applied for? Discrepancy or difference? It says discrepancy, but I'm wondering if that's.
There's nothing. Everything's in place. We're not adding to, changing. We're not building. We're not digging into the lake bed. It's a seasonal dock that we're looking just to keep in the lake. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep, I can hear you. Yep,
Okay.
I think that helps. And then there is a follow-up question related to the dock. What's the proposed purpose for the permanent dock? And have the applicant considered fluctuating water levels and how a permanent dock will not be able to adjust accordingly?
Well, we've actually just had a real difficult time trying to find a company to remove it. So we went through this process to keep it in the water. We've had it in the water for 3 or 4 years now, with the water fluctuating, and we haven't had an issue with it. Once again, this is not a permanent structure. It's a seasonal structure laying on the lake bed, just like everybody else's seasonal structure docks. So if it came to it, it could be addressed. But over the past 3 years, we never had an issue with the raising water levels.
Right, but to clarify from the state's perspective, a structure left in year round is a permanent structure.
Correct. What I'm referring to is we're not going to be boring into the ground or boring into the lake bed.
And that answers another one of the questions: does EGLE have an opinion as whether this is a permanent dock as a structure? And it sounds like that's the case. It is, according to Joe. All right. We're going to go to, it looks like we have a raised hand. So we are going to unmute Ed Robinson. And you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, I have a question because will the applicant be required to bring his riprap up to code and to change the sand? Because you said that was not the sand he should have used. I happen to know that the neighbor next to him, Dave Cortez, had a lot of the sand wash onto his beach, and it's caused him considerable trouble. So will we be required to correct that?
I'd like to state that the sand that washed up on the neighbor's yard was sand that we brought in for the beach. That was not the sand that was used for the riprap. That was beach sand that we used for our beach. So that his concerns aren't related to the riprap or the dock.
Joe or Aaron?
Well, I would just offer the state generally does not permit sanding of beaches. We would say use pea stone or something that's going to stay in place. We do have a minor project for that.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that question and for those answers. Looks like Elizabeth Swift has her hand raised, so we are going to unmute you and you can ask your question, Elizabeth.
Actually, excuse me, I was just clarifying the Lot 5 owners are having trouble logging in, but I am aware that they had contacted soil erosion of Charlevoix County when the sand ended up on their lot in May of 2020, whether it's beach sand or from the riprap work.
And if
is there another phone number that they can try? Because
there is a phone number. And there also is, of course, logging in using the link that you're on.
But the phone number and the email apparently didn't work.
Okay, they may want to try on another line. I don't know. It should work. Let me see if there's any other people logged in by phone. Not seeing any right now. All right, yeah, phone and computer are the options. I will say that there are other ways to make a comment tonight if they have questions or comments, and I can share those, and you can pass those on if you want, or you can contact Erin, and I'll provide Erin's contact information as well.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Yeah. All right, Jennifer McKay, it looks like your hand is raised. Did we lose Jennifer? Okay, now it's raised. Yeah, you can. We're going to unmute you, Jennifer, and then you can ask your question.
Thank you. So a couple things. I have seen the photos of the neighbor's property, and I don't think the after the fact permit covers the beach sanding, and the photos are pretty intensive of the damage that was done to the neighboring riparian.
Hey, Jennifer, you're gonna have an opportunity to make a comment later. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. I apologize. My question is, and this is to EGLE. So the application doesn't match up to actually what is in the field, and so I guess what should we be commenting on, since the application and what is currently existing doesn't match up? And if you need me to clarify, I guess the application is requesting, riprap for 12 to 18-inch field stone extending out 5 feet, but based upon the information in the supplementary documents, there are boulders up to 27 inches and the revetment extends 27 or 22 feet. So I guess we're trying to figure out, as far as the Watershed Council, are you looking to approve just what was in the application?
Joe or Erin?
No, I think what we're considering is a modification, something less than what was applied for. But the sand is something that's new to me, the beach sanding. I've not heard that before, so that may need to be included in a modified application to correct that. But no, to be clear, the applicant applies for what they apply for, and we would be looking to minimize impacts to a greater extent than has been constructed out here. So I think, to answer your question more directly, I think you can comment on anything that you think you should. If you're saying that the boulders are larger, that's, it sounds like that may be worth commenting on. You've already made that point, but we'll take comment on whatever you really want to comment on.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, let's see, next question. In an earlier comment, the person raised the issue that the entire island is legally subject to mutual covenants covering platted lots. Under Covenant 2C, structures must be approved and building plans must be approved prior to commencement of construction. The question is simply, does the placement of a permanent dock, as he indicates in the application that is subject to the island covenants, indicate EGLE will defer that approval process prior to EGLE's approval or denial of the permit? So I guess the question is, will that approval process come first before EGLE's approval or denial?
I'd like to address that. I mentioned that in my introduction there. Since conception of since the corporation was founded in 1986, not a single dock has went through an approval process. In the covenants, the section C that's being referred to right there is referring to barns and sheds. It's clearly not referring to docks. And like I stated, not a single dock has went through approval process since 1986.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. Some more questions. Go ahead.
Hold on, Brian, just real quick. I think from the state's perspective, our permit would not necessarily eclipse the local permits or the island group permits. It'd be up to them to police their whatever zoning they might have or whatever requirements they have locally. And there's a disclaimer in any and all permits we issued that we're not trying to step on their authorities, but our permit is only for the state authorities. It's not for the local. The locals would have control over their own regulations.
And then just to confirm, so that they're two entirely separate permitting processes, or potentially. Is that kind of just to confirm?
Yeah, basically a project proponent would need to get all appropriate permits, right? Not just EGLE permits, but any other local, county, federal permits if they're required, which I don't believe they are here.
Thanks, Joe. Let's see here. There are some additional comments related to the dock. Yes, somebody asked, it was mentioned that is considered permanent under the application. One question is, will the application need to be modified? Or is the applicant changing the application to indicate the dock will not be modified to make it permanent? Is the applicant changing the application to indicate the dock will not be modified to make it permanent?
I think this is where I was saying quote unquote permanent dock. The state requires any structure when it's left in the lake year round to have a permanent dock application or permit, whether it be a seasonal dock left in the lake all year round, or if it was built to be a permanent dock. We're not making any changes to the existing seasonal dock. We're just requesting or applying to keep it in year round. So that would then reference or determine that this dock would be considered a permanent dock. But we're not doing any modifications. We're not bringing any machinery in. We're not disturbing the dock. We're leaving our existing seasonal dock as it stays and sits in the summer to just sit all year round without any construction, without any heavy machinery, without any movement in the spring or the fall, just to sit as it sits in the summer.
All right, thanks, Dominic. And I've got one follow-up question in the Q&A box, and then we have one raised hand, and then we'll move on to the next part of the hearing because we're at about time. So the question, describe how, or the mechanism or process the dock will be kept from freezing, or can you talk about the dock freezing at all in the wintertime?
Is that part of the application process?
This is a question that a participant asked, so feel free to answer it or not. It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we've got one raised hand, so we'll move on to that.
Well, I can
okay.
maybe if Dominic's not willing to speak to that, I suspect you'd be placing a bubbler out there. I don't know that for a fact, but that would be my suspicion, to keep the area from freezing.
That's what I'm doing. Yes, sir. It's out there right now to test it. It pretty much runs whenever the temperature goes down to 32 degrees. You can barely hear it from the shore. and it's not per se a bubbler where it bubbles air. It's actually a small 1/2 horsepower motor that's mounted on a post that circulates the water from about 6 to 8 inches from the lake bed where it's warmer, and it angles up to the surface of the lake, and that movement and that warmer water prevents the ice from freezing around that area.
Yeah, thanks for the info, Dominic. We're going to take one more question. Ed Robinson has his hand raised. Ed, do you have a question?
Yeah, I understand that Dominic's running something similar to a bubbler at present, and I understand those things disrupt the ice and make it more hazardous for people that are going on the lake. And I'm curious how far offshore those disruptions continue.
At this de-icer is aimed back at the shore, and it's a radius that is maybe less than 90 degrees, and it shouldn't go further out than our dock now, and it should just pretty much keep the area around our dock thawed.
All right. Thank you for your question, Ed, and for that answer.
And Ryan, before you move on to the next portion of the hearing, I don't know if anybody else has questions. Let them go first if they do, but I just had a couple of points I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, we're going to move on. The questions we still have in here are related to the dock height and the dock structure that we've already talked about.
Okay, I just wanted to speak to a couple of things that Dominic brought up. One thing that Dominic, you seem to be mentioning a couple of times is the view from other owners of this dock. Not really a concern for EGLE. We do have the capacity to review aesthetics, that's mostly not in Part 301, but in Part 303 wetlands protection. But that's really not a big part of our review, is the aesthetic of the view. You may be hearing that from neighbors, but that is that's not weighed terribly heavily in our review, is the fact that somebody may or may not be able to see the dock. Just want to be clear about that. And I think, the other docks that are nearby, setting a precedent, that's really not a part of our review as well. The regulatory pendulum swings. There's times when we are more permissive and times when we're more or less permissive, more correctly. And so things that may have been permitted years ago or have existed without permits past the statute of limitations are across the landscape. But, this is not part of our review, the neighboring properties. We're reviewing this property and this property alone. So whether there's a dock that's longer or shorter or been permanent in the neighboring properties is not part of our review. Just want to be clear on that.
All right, thanks, Joe. And I take a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Those were actually more directed to the neighbors that brought up those concerns. They were not mainly directed at EGLE. Thank you.
Yeah, and Dominic, one last thing. Do you see the need to alter the dock height or change the structure? Or I guess alter the dock height. That's the only thing it looks like in the Q&A that hasn't been covered specifically.
I do not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for that question and answer session, asking those questions, and Dominic and our panel, Joe and Aaron, for answering those. We are going to have to move on to the next part of the hearing today. But before we do that, as mentioned before, there's other ways you can submit official comment. In case you don't want to make a comment verbally tonight, or if you think of something afterwards or run out of time tonight, you can provide your comments directly to my Enviro by accessing the public hearing event under submission HPX 8JJV OHYHT, and this link to MindBiro is going to be put in the chat or by mail to EGLE, Water Resources Division, Gaylord District Office 2100M32, Gaylord, Michigan 49735. And the comment period after the public hearing will be open for 10 days, which is going to be December 28th. And then obviously if anybody's having trouble logging in or with the telephone, this is the other option to make a comment, and we will obviously look into whatever that issue could be. All right, at this point, I would like to invite Erin to read our opening statement tonight.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Erin Emmington, and I am the district representative in the Water Resource Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE. I will be serving as the hearings officer for this public hearing on EGLE submission number HPX-8JJV-0HYHT. Tonight with me is Joe Haas, District Supervisor of the Gaylord Water Resource Division. To explain how this is going to work, I will begin with some background information about why we are here tonight. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I will outline the procedures we use to take your comments and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. It will then be time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of the time tonight listening to these comments. At the end of the hearing, I will read the closing statement. To provide some background information, the Water Resource Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain area activities such as dredging or filling a lake, stream, or wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shore protection or constructing docks, and building in a designated critical sand dune area, wetland, or floodplain. The law governing those responsibilities is the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, as amended, Act 451. We are here tonight because Dominic Torres has applied to EGLE for an after-the-fact permit under the authority of Part 301, Inland Lakes and Streams of the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act. The applicant requests after-the-fact authorization to place rock riprap along 70 feet of shoreline with rock diameter up to 27 inches and 700 square feet of fill sand, cobble, and gravel landward of the rock. The applicant also proposes to place a permanent dock with an H-shaped dock section measuring 48 feet by 4 feet, 16 feet by 4 feet, 28 feet by 4 feet with an additional 8 by 4 foot finger dock and 12 by 8 foot platform. In order for a permit to be granted, EGLE must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set by Part 301, Inland Lakes and Streams. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on Thumb Lake. When reviewing an application for a permit under the provisions of Part 301 of Act 451, EGLE is charged to make the following considerations as required by Section 30106 of Part 301. The department shall issue a permit if it finds that the structure or project will not adversely affect the public trust or riparian rights. And 2, the department shall not grant a permit if the proposed project or structure will unlawfully impair or destroy any waters or other natural resources of the state. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in Dominic Torres's project an opportunity to provide information that EGLE can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that EGLE can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that EGLE must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition of the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that EGLE is, by law, not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there is widespread support or opposition to the project. In just a moment, I will outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments. But before I do so, I need to mention that the notice of this hearing was published in the Petoskey News Review on November 28th, 2023. As we discussed at the beginning of the informational session, if you have a comment to provide, raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. To ensure the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we will follow these steps. 1, first, the applicant and/or their consultant has already had an opportunity to describe the proposed project. Second, we will call on those who have indicated in their registration that they would like to speak. After that, we will call on all those that raise their hand in the Zoom toolbar to indicate that they would like to make a comment if they haven't already been called upon. As a reminder, if you are participating in this hearing via telephone only, follow the directions of the moderator on how to identify that you would like to make a comment. You may also submit your comments to EGLE via My Enviro portal, email, or US mail. When all the comments have been completed, we will ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. When your name is called, your microphone will be unmuted. As you begin your comments, please state your name and any group or association you may represent. Each person will be given 4 minutes to make their comments. We will indicate to you when you have a minute left. Please begin wrapping up your comments and end within the allotted time. If need be, we will indicate when your time has ended. I ask that we all be courteous and respectful to one another tonight. Please also recognize that EGLE staff is here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be a part of the information EGLE will consider in making its decision on whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this public hearing is open for 10 days from the date of this hearing, ending on December 28, 2023. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will also be considered in EGLE's decision. Following the close of the public comment period, EGLE will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications or send a letter of denial. You may find out what the decision is by checking the EGLE My Enviro portal website and searching for the application number HPX-8JJV-0HYHT. Thank you for your attention. We will begin calling the names of those who have indicated that they would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Erin, for reading that. As Erin mentioned, I have a list of names who during registration indicated they want to make a statement. We'll start with those. There's 3 people on that list, and then we'll go to anybody else who would like to make a comment. You would just have to raise your hand in Zoom. If you're on the phone, selecting #2 will raise your hand as well. Everyone tonight will have a chance to make a comment if you choose to make one. And it's 1 comment per person. If there's someone else on the line that would like to make a comment when you're called upon, just let me know. And if they're on the line, they can make that comment as well. Everyone will have 4 minutes. We're actually gonna have a countdown timer that you should be able to see count down of the 4-minute period. When you have a minute left, I will do a 1-minute timer, which will sound like this. So you hear that ding, means you have a minute left, basically. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get rolling. We're going to call on our first person. And again, if everybody could identify their name and if they have any affiliation, we'll get rolling. So my first person on my list is Anna McGlashan. So Anna, we are going to unmute you on our end, and then you can unmute yourself, which you are, and you can begin when you're ready.
All right. Thank you. I'm actually going to defer my comments to Jennifer McKay, who is also on this call.
All right, it's gonna be 1 comment per person. So Jennifer will be able to get 4 minutes as well. So
yes.
Okay, gotcha. So let me restart this. All right, so we'll unmute you, Anna, and then we will defer to Jennifer. All right, so Jennifer, you can unmute yourself. And you have 4 minutes as well. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. So good evening. And I would like to first thank you, EGLE, for hosting tonight's public hearing and for the opportunity to provide comments. So my name's Jennifer McKay, and I'm the Chief Policy and Government Affairs Director at Tip of the Mint Watershed Council, whose mission is to protect and restore Northern Michigan's water resources. After reviewing the permit application, the Watershed Council recommends denial of both the after-the-fact shoreline work and the permanent dock. We recommend requiring the applicant conduct restoration for the shoreline stabilization activity conducted in 2020 due to the extensive adverse impacts to the public trust, riparian rights, and the environment, and the fact that feasible and prudent alternatives existed. We did submit detailed written comments, so I'm only going to highlight the primary issues of concern here. So despite the applicant's claim that the pandemic prevented the individual from obtaining a permit, that is not sufficient justification. EGLE issued more than 2,000 permits in 2020, significantly more than any other year. And feasible and prudent alternatives did exist for the shoreline stabilization, such as bioengineering or minimizing rock size and the extent of riprap, which could have been realized had the applicant actually gone through the permit process. Furthermore, the shoreline activity caused significant damage to the neighboring riparian owner. And as noted earlier, this was due to beach sanding, which has not been included as part of the after-the-fact permit, even though it's a significant violation of the Clean Water Act and Michigan's Inland Lakes and Streams Act. And as I mentioned earlier, it's worthwhile noting that the existing riprap shoreline project is much larger than what is in the permit application. So the application is for riprap comprised of 12 to 18-inch fieldstone and extending 5 feet waterward. But again, the current project as is has boulders of 27 inches and the revetment extends 22 feet waterward of the ordinary high water mark. So due to the egregious nature of the violations, the Watershed Council recommends restoration of the site to allow for positive environmental impacts while still providing shoreline protection. We recommend the applicant be required to restore the shoreline using more environmentally friendly techniques such as bioengineering and minimizing the size and extent of the riprap, as well as incorporating a shoreline protection strip, which is necessary according to local zoning requirements. With respect to the permanent docks, including a seasonal dock left in the water, impacts our natural resources and their use, aesthetic values such as development and lake characteristics, and navigation. There's considerable evidence that permanent docks shade bottomlands, alter patterns of water flow, disrupt sediment, introduce chemicals into our waterways, and impact navigation. And so given the potential and actual cumulative adverse impacts to the public trust, riparian rights, and the environment, the Watershed Council recommends denial of the permanent dock and encourages EGLE to work with the applicant to install feasible and prudent alternatives to meet the desired needs of the applicant while protecting the health and the future of the lake. So on behalf of the board, staff, and members of the Tippecanoe Watershed Council, thank you for the opportunity to share these comments with you this evening.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Jennifer. All right. All right. Next up is Elizabeth Swift. So Elizabeth, we're going to find you in the audience. And then after Elizabeth, we will go to the raised hands. All right, Elizabeth, you are unmuted. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I am Elizabeth Swift, owner of Lot 6, and as Mr. Torres has already somewhat mentioned me, I am 2 lots west of him. And he's mentioned I have a view of his dock system, which I understand is not something that EGLE would consider in the application. And for that reason, I reached out to Dom and his wife, asking personally if they would reconsider their intention of a permanent dock. But at any rate, I had submitted some concerns November 7th. I have further comments I want to share tonight. Because I have the full view of my neighbor's dock system, since I see it from the entire east side of my cottage, as the cold weather approached, I have noticed things about the water at the end of the dock and the water flow westward. I could see that some sort of bubbler or agitator system had been installed to keep the water moving at the end of his dock. And on a day it was cold enough, I could see ice was forming further out from his dock and my eastern shoreline and somewhat on lot 5 shoreline. What was notable was a significant area of open water west of his dock in front of lot 5 and toward my lot 6. I am very concerned the integrity of the ice in the area surrounding his dock could be impacted and become a safety hazard for people, pets, and wildlife. Cottagers and visitors have always enjoyed walking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, ice fishing, the whole surface of Lake Louise. Some people prefer to walk closer to the shoreline, and that would become problematic with a permanent dock and bubbler system. Doing research about risk management considerations for dock bubbler systems, they made the point that areas of thin ice can be created by dock bubblers and can often be difficult to see. Many people enjoy moonlit time on the ice as well, adding to that concern. If the bubbler or agitation system works to keep the dock from freezing, what distance surrounding the dock will have open water or at least thin or weakened ice? How will people be alerted to the danger? Would it necessitate flashing lights? Even if humans could be alerted, unfortunately, pets and wildlife would likely not be. Typically, deer bed down on Horner Island and are accustomed to traveling on the ice as well. And I know a dog has already been lost due to thin ice this season. Thin ice can often be a concern, but we don't expect it to be man-made. It seems in order to satisfy the request for a permanent, the general Lake Louise population and visitors could be at risk in our area. If a permanent dock is permitted, will there be any recourse if issues during or after a winter season, if they occur? And what would that recourse be? In summary, I oppose the request for a permanent dock, and I thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Elizabeth. All right, we are going to go to the raised hands. So we've got, so if you haven't made a comment yet and would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand in Zoom. We'll take your comments in order. Again, everyone will have an opportunity to make a comment. And if you're on the phone, select #2 to raise your hand. So Neil Haney, Neil, we're going to unmute you. You can unmute yourself and begin your comment when you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan. My name is Neil Haney. I represent Lake Louise Christian Community as the Executive Director, speaking on behalf of the Board of Trustees. As the owner of nearly 90% of the riparian rights for Thumb Lake, we oppose this general idea of a permanent dock, primarily for the reasons you've already heard, so I won't reiterate what our friends from Tip of the Mitt Watershed have spoken and what Beth has spoken as well. We also have submitted a document outlining our opposition to this piece. We have a vested interest in protecting Thumb Lake and its shoreline, and believe that putting a permanent dock in would cause adverse effects to Thumb Lake and the community surrounding it. We do believe that as part of living within a community, that the general regulations need to apply to all. Therefore, we fear the precedent that this may set. As Joe referenced earlier, we won't go back to what has happened, but I would disagree with statements that have been made of other permanent docks on this lake. Those are not founded, in my opinion. I would also disagree with the inability to find help to remove docks from the lake, as Lake Louise Christian Community has 126 individuals and cottagers around the lake that the vast majority of them have a dock of some nature, and 126 of them, plus 12 islanders, seem to have no problem finding a way to remove their dock in some way, shape, or form. So I believe that to be an unfounded argument as well. And I would like to thank EGLE for their time this evening, for taking their time in consideration of these matters and all of the documents that have been submitted ahead of time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Neil. All right. Is there anybody else out there tonight that would like to make a comment who has not made a comment? We'll give you a couple seconds here in case you change your mind. And while we're doing that, I'll just let you know. So the next part of the evening, we're going to go through those other ways to submit a comment tonight in case you didn't want to make a statement. So you'll have those. And then we will also go through who to contact if you have some additional questions that weren't answered tonight. And that would be Aaron, and we'll provide Aaron's and Joe's contact info. All right, I am not seeing any other raised hands right now, so we're going to go ahead and close out the hearing portion tonight. Aaron, would you want to read the closing statement for us tonight?
Yep. Thank you for your comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until December 28th, 2023. Following the close of the public comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project. Just to remind those that may still want to submit a comment, comments can be submitted via MyEnviro portal, email, or US mail. The hearing is now closed. Thank you again.
All right, yeah, thanks for reading that, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, you can still submit comments through MyEnviro, submission HPX8JJV 0HYHT, or by mail to EGLE Water Resources Division, to the Gaylord District Office 2100M-32. That's M32. That's Gaylord, Michigan, GAYLORD 49735. As Aaron mentioned, it'll be open for 10 days, so December 28th. All right. If you have additional questions, feel free to take a picture of this slide or write down the numbers. You can contact, and I'll read these in case there are people on the phone. Aaron Emmington, at 989-619-8519. That's 989-619-8519. Or Emmington E at michigan.com, or .gov, I'm sorry. Michigan.gov, EMINGTONE at MICHIGAN.gov, or Joe Haas can be reached at 989-330-9252. That's 989-330-9252, or at haasj1 at michigan.gov, HAASJ1 at MICHIGAN.gov. All right, that almost wraps us up. Do you have any comments, closing comments for us, Joe?
Yeah, just real quick. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be actively involved in this hearing. Public involvement is a priority for EGLE, and your participation is important to us, particularly when it comes to protecting our shared natural resources for present and future generations. Your public comments are an important part of making the state's project review thorough and complete. Again, thank you for your participation, comments, cooperation. We appreciate that you have shown an interest in this proposed application for an after-the-fact permit by taking the time to attend this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Aaron, and all of you for participating in this process. Last thing I have, just a reminder that this hearing was recorded. It'll be on EGLE's YouTube channel in the next couple days, so you'll be able to watch it or forward it on to others who may not have been able to watch it. So with that, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you very much.